What is going on, y'all? Joe here from Blue Line Woodworks, and in today's video I'm going to show you how I build my wooden flags. So let's get started. I start off by cutting the boards to their rough length. Your final dimension will be 37 inches long, so I usually cut them at 37.5 or 37.75 just to give myself a little room to play with. I use rough cut pine from my local sawmill, but I've also used lumber from the big box stores as well as pallet wood. Now, if it's your first flag, pallet wood is a great option because you can usually find pallets locally for free, and they already give you that rustic look that many people are looking for. Some of the boards that I was using were a little bit too wide for my miter saw. As you can see there in the background, it is just a standard miter saw. It doesn't have the sliding option to it. So I simply just mark out the rough length on these boards, take a speed square, draw the line with my pencil, and then I use that speed square to help guide the circular saw along to try to get as straight of a cut as possible. Now, these cuts don't have to be perfect, that's why they're called rough cuts. But if you have that speed square, you minimize waste and get the cuts as straight as possible. The laser helps too. Now it's time to flatten these boards. I'm marking the cupped corners here just so that I keep my orientation correct. I like to send them all through cup side up on thinner stock and take very, very small passes off through the planer. Make sure you're taking very shallow passes off when you're running these boards through the planer. If you take too much off at one time, the rollers of the planer will actually just push the board down, and when it's removed from the other side, the cup will still be there. So as you can see, the material starts to be removed from the outer corners. Keep running them through the planer until a little bit of material has been removed from the entire board. Then you know it's ready to be flipped over and flatten the other side. I make sure that all the boards are at the same thickness, and that usually ends up being around 3/4 of an inch. If you're using rough cut lumber or pallet wood, you're going to need a joint and edge prior to sending the boards through the table saw. I always use my track saw for this task. It's fast, efficient, and it always gives me a nice square edge. You can use a joiner if you have one. I just don't have a full-size joiner, and I really don't have the room for it in my garage wood shop. Just a little side note here, I'm using enough lumber for about 4 flags. I like to batch them out, so if you're looking at that stack thinking that you need a lot, you really don't. Just do a little bit of math and figure out how much lumber you'll need for 13 1.5 inch pieces. Now it's time to get these boards to their final width. I'll be cutting these at 1.5 inches. If you guys are trying to make a smaller or a bigger flag and you're unsure on the proportions, go to usflag.org and there's a nice chart there that will tell you exactly how wide the stripes need to be based on the overall size of the flag. Great resource, and it helps you keep the flag in proportion. In case you've never counted, the American flag has 13 stripes, so therefore you will need 13 pieces of wood for this. Once you have them laid out on your workbench, flip them around, figure out which grain pattern you want to be on the front. Obviously, the more wavy grain pattern is going to look nicer once you burn it. The straighter grain pattern can be a little boring, so if you have a flag full of straight grain, it doesn't look as nice. When charring the stripes, I like to use the MAP gas from Burns-O-Matic. That's the yellow canister. You can find it at your local home improvement stores. I've used propane, but this burns way faster.
Alright guys, so I got all the stripes burned. Now remember, at the beginning of this process, your rough cuts, you made them a little bit longer than 37 inches. So I forgot to do it on this one, but it's way easier to cut them to their final length before burning them because I had to go back and then burn all the ends. Not a big deal, but you always want to be efficient when doing these kind of things. So let me swing the camera around. I'll show you what we're working with here. So lay out your stripes how you like them. I like to try to alternate here with, you have the wider grain and then the tight grain. I try to alternate, and then for this particular flag, it's going to be dark and natural stripes. So I like the natural stripes to have a little bit more character in them with a more wavy grain pattern. And then the tight grain pattern, those will be dark. So these will stand out a little bit more. If you cover them with the dark stain, then obviously these aren't going to be highlighted as much. So that's just how I do it. So now we are going to, excuse the camera here, but now I'm going to stain the stripes. I use Minwax water-based stain. No longer sold at Home Depot. You can get it at Lowe's though. It's the tinnable stain, so you have to get this and then you bring it to the counter where they do the paint and everything and tell them that you want charcoal. That's what this is. So this flag will be charcoal, so you can see how that looks. They can also do red, white, and blue if you want to do a traditional colored flag. So we're going to stain these up.
When staining the stripes, just make sure you get a nice even coat on there. I found that with the charcoal stain, you only need one coat, but if you're using red, white, and blue, they definitely need multiple coats.
Alright, so now we got something that looks more like an American flag. At this point, you can stain the second, fourth, and sixth stripe for the Union now, or you can wait until after you assemble it. My personal preference is I wait until after it's assembled. That way I make sure the line is nice and straight and square to the rest of the flag. So we're gonna get this thing assembled. All right, so for clamping up the flags, you wanna make sure you got some horizontal pressure, some vertical pressure, make sure it's flat to your work surface. Some people like to glue the individual stripes. I don't do that. I use vertical runners, throw them on the back here, glue those down, brad nails, and it's done. I've never had any issues with it. It's very secure, so that's how I do it.
When assembling the flag, I use 18 gauge 1 1/4 inch brad nails. The cordless nailer is fantastic as well. If you've been on the fence about getting one, I highly recommend it. And if you're wondering, I'm using that mallet just to keep all the stripes nice and flush and level with each other. That way when I flip the flag over, everything is nice and flat on the top. So after I flip the flag over, it's time to stain the Union. So as you can see, the second, fourth, and sixth stripe have not been stained yet. So I mark out 14 inches, draw a little pencil line, and then I lay the frog tape down, making sure that line is nice and square to the top of the flag. If you ask me, the frog tape is absolutely worth a few extra dollars because you get clean lines like this every time. So I just want to be clear that I did not invent this genius idea. It was shared with me on Instagram from a couple of other great makers. But using a couple of old razor blades that are all dull and nasty, throw them in between your stripes when you're staining and you get zero bleed through. Great tip, super easy utilizing what you already have in the shop.
Alright y'all, so the flag is assembled and stained. I needed to add a blue line in there. I forgot to do that prior to assembly. So I just used some frog tape, and again, you get super clean lines with that. So for the design on this flag, I'll have some stars and a department patch in the Union, and I'll be using my CNC to achieve that. The CNC is an awesome tool. I got it earlier this year after I sold a bunch of projects. I just reinvested it into my business. That being said, if you're a part-time woodworker or a hobbyist, there's no need to go into debt for a tool. So if you're looking at a CNC, I highly advise saving up and just paying for it all up front so that you don't have to worry about payments. That's what I did, and I think that was a good choice. Now, if you're going to be using a Dremel or a rotary tool, this is the first flag that I made back February 18th of this year. I used a Walmart brand rotary tool to carve out these stars. It turned out pretty nice. It was made out of pallet wood as well. So that just goes into work with what you got. All these different tools, sure, it's awesome to have the greatest line and the top brands, all that good stuff, but earn your upgrades, earn them. And you'll do it. If you're doing quality work, people are gonna buy your stuff and you'll be able to upgrade these tools. On the lines of rotary tools, right quick, don't get a Walmart brand one. Don't waste your time. Get a Dremel. They're fairly inexpensive, and get the flex shaft attachment for it. It feels like a pen in your hand. Really takes a lot of stress off of your hand while you're carving because it takes a long time, and you can achieve some pretty amazing detail with that. I'll show some pictures of the flags that I did by hand so that you can see what you can do with a Dremel if you just take your time. So I need to go program the cut file for this, and then we'll get it cut out. Alright y'all, so now that the flag design is cut out, it's time to apply some finish. I prefer to use water-based finishes that don't amber the wood or change any colors, such as the blue line on this flag. So I'm going to be using Varathane Triple Thick water-based polyurethane. I also have used Minwax Polycrylic in the past, works excellent. You just have to put a few more coats if you're using the polycrylic. I'm just going to apply it with a regular old brush, no need to get fancy, so let's get to it.
When using either this product or the Minwax Polycrylic, you can apply it with a regular brush, a foam brush. I've also sprayed the polycrylic, which was very effective. I was able to finish the flag in roughly 40 seconds. When mounting the flags to the wall, I utilized keyholes. I made this super simple little jig that fits my trim router that gives me accurate straight keyholes every time.
Alrighty y'all, so this flag is done, got the finish on there. All it needed was one coat and it is good to go. So that completes the flag build. Now I'm just gonna get ready to ship it off. If you guys have any questions or suggestions on how to make this more efficient, please leave a comment below. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like the video if you liked it. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And if you wanna see the next flag that I have rolling on the CNC behind me, make sure you go follow me on Instagram at Blue Line Woodworks. Link will be in the description below. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.